Hi, I'm Rachel, and I'm here to talk about the 73rd Annual National Jewish Book Awards, covering the year of 2023. So the National Jewish Book Awards are put out by the Jewish Book Council. This year they announced the awards at the Marlene Meyerson JCC of Manhattan's second annual Books That Changed My Life Festival. They had a whole video, which I will link down below, and then a bunch more information on their website, because it also includes the finalists on the website. So for the National Jewish Book Awards, they had over 100 judges deliberating this year on 650 submissions in over 20 categories in fiction and nonfiction and a couple of other things like poetry as well. And I'm here to talk about adult fiction and nonfiction books that particularly stood out to me. And I thought I would start by highlighting 5 fiction titles and 5 nonfiction titles. So starting with fiction, the first book I'm going to talk about is The Heaven and Earth Grocery Store by James McBride. This is a book that's gotten a lot of play outside of the Jewish world as well. The author is African American, and the story is about a Jewish and African American community in Pennsylvania several decades back. And it was also a contender for the long list of the award that I judge personally, the BookTube Prize, and we're going to find out on February 1st whether or not it actually made the long list. I think it stands a pretty good chance because of how popular it is, like in the broad reading community, and I'm so excited that it was also recognized in the National Jewish Book Awards. The second book I want to talk about is The Wolf Hunt by Ayelet Gundar-Goshen. She's an Israeli author in translation. I've read a couple of her books. I've enjoyed them. They push the envelope. They're pretty challenging. They talk about complicated political themes, and this one actually will be taking place in America with also with Israeli characters. So I haven't read it yet, but it's definitely on my radar, something I hope I can get to. There are 2 fiction books that I read last year that made it onto the National Jewish Book Awards. The first of them is Once We Were Home by Jennifer Rosner, which actually I didn't like as much as the judges did here. This is Holocaust fiction that it follows 3 storylines, 4 protagonists from the Holocaust into the 1960s who had very different experiences. And I thought that it really bit off more than it could chew, and that none of the characters and their storylines were that well developed because it was just too much in too little space. So it was a really interesting idea, and I personally wish the follow-through were a little bit better. The second book I read was KANTIKA by Elizabeth Graver, which I enjoyed a bit more. I still had, I guess, a couple of issues. It did feel like, biting off a little more than she could chew. This author was fictionalizing to a certain degree her family history and following various narrators, so sometimes it felt a little bit unfocused to me, but then at other times, especially with the patriarch and the way that he was grappling with his Sephardi heritage, it did speak to me, and especially where he was coming back to Spain right before World War II. But personally, I thought the strongest part, the part that spoke to me the most, took place with his daughter when she got to America and had a relationship with her own stepdaughter. And that part spoke to me most on a character level. And so there is a lot of beautiful, compelling stuff in here, and it's exciting too to see that it won the Sephardic Culture Award, because I think usually that goes to nonfiction books, but I think this book really did make such a big splash. And fiction can provide such relatable stories, and this one I think really spoke to the Sephardic experience, so it's really exciting to see it here. And finally, to wrap up fiction from the National Jewish Book Awards, I'm going to go to something else I haven't read yet, but certainly does intrigue me. It's All Night Pharmacy by Ruth Madievsky. And this is one of those books, I think, that deals a little bit with Jewish trauma and intergenerational trauma, which, I don't know, a lot of books I really liked last year dealt with that, and so that really does compel me. I think there's also some modern stuff in here about a toxic relationship between sisters and some drug use and things that might appeal to, you know, current day realities as well. So I'm really interested to see how this all comes together. Okay, and now I am moving on to 5 nonfiction titles from the National Jewish Book Awards that intrigued me this year. And I'm going to start with the one that also was a contender for the BookTube Prize this year as well. It is Bruno Schulz, An Artist, a Murder, and the Hijacking of History by Benjamin Balint. I'm not quite as positive that this will make the long list as I am with the Heaven and Earth grocery store, but I'm hopeful that it will. We'll have to see. But yes, this is a biography of a Polish writer, a Jewish writer, and you know, so it naturally intrigued me. I definitely want to get invested in biographies. It's, I think, a type of nonfiction that really works for me. Another nonfiction title that intrigued me is a more challenging subgenre, but I still am interested. It is Fractured Tablets, Forgetfulness and Fallibility in Late Ancient Rabbinic Culture by Mira Balberg. And admittedly, I just have a personal interest in rabbinic literature, and it even is inspiring a lot of work with a Jewish fantasy novel that I'm writing. So part of the reason, though, that I might want to stay away from this for now is that I read all these books and I get invested in, you know, trying to understand this world and how I might want to influence my own world building rather than do any writing. And it's certainly, this is going to be really kind of heavy, complex subject matter. I think she really does focus on the concern of Rabbinic Judaism about how being away from Temple Judaism would lead to forgetfulness in Jewish practice, or maybe even how that might help rabbis and the type of Judaism they want to, you know, propagate to the people. So yeah, there's a lot of rich subject here. But there are 2 American-centric books on this list that I'm thinking right now maybe I should take time later in the year, carve it out, to read these 2 books because they also intrigue me. And the first one of these is The Jews of Summer, Summer Camp and the Jewish Culture in Post-War America by Sandra Fox. I remember when this book first was reviewed on the Jewish Book Council website, and I guess I got that nostalgic feeling, not necessarily as much for my own upbringing, but maybe for my mother's, because this sort of photo, it looks like it might be like from the 60s or the 70s, when she would have been active in Jewish summer camps, and so I am sort of viewing it through that lens, and I'd really be curious to like look at the, you know, the cultural relevance of summer camps. And the second book that I'm finding intriguing is Loving Our Own Bones, Disability, Wisdom, and the Spiritual Subversiveness of Knowing Ourselves Whole by Julia Watts Belser, which is about disability in Judaism, and the author, I believe, has a disability as well. And it immediately made me think of people I know in my, you know, my own Jewish community and my synagogue who have disabilities. And of course, I don't even know all of them. I certainly am most knowledgeable about the ones with very, you know, visible disabilities, but there's others as well. And so, like, at first I thought, well, maybe this will be, you know, some sort of treatise about how, you know, modern Jewish communities can do better by these people, and I think that'll be part of this book, but I also do believe it is going to be text study about how we can look at how disability is portrayed in the Bible and maybe get something a little more nuanced out of it, a little more empathetic out of it, which is also something that really interests me, like taking a much more modern lens to these ideas of disability or, you know, other social ideas. And how they can serve us today. And the final nonfiction book of the National Jewish Book Awards that intrigued me this year, it's challenging in its own way, I think, is FRAYED, The Disputes Unraveling Religious Zionists by Yair Ettinger. And I think it's just challenging because religious Zionism is a very charged subject, especially as that whole movement is moving rightward and is very contentious. And also, you know, just the whole idea of having fissures in any sort of, you know, political movement or cultural movement, you know, it just speaks naturally to conflict. But I think it's just an important thing to keep abreast of about how different groups within Judaism are doing, you know, on the modern stage. So yeah, it's just something I thought could be, really beneficial to learn more about. And a final thing I want to celebrate before signing off on this video is a small cadre of Jewish fantasy that was written last year and that I've read recently, which didn't really make it into the National Jewish Book Awards, but I thought it deserved a little bit of a montage, so here we go. And just as a bit of a caveat, I will have links to my Goodreads reviews for those Jewish fantasy titles down below, and I will also link to the Goodreads pages for all of the books I mentioned here down below, and reviews if I have them. So that about covers it for me now. I want to thank the National Jewish Book Awards and especially the Jewish Book Council for putting all of this together. I mean, I'm on the Jewish Book Council website all the time, all year. It's really my primary source for keeping on top of modern Jewish literature, so I'm really indebted to you guys for a lot of my reading throughout all of these recent years, and hopefully for many more to come. And I hope to be back on this channel very soon to address some reading I did last year. I wrapped up my backlist of Geraldine Brooks novels by reading 3 of them in December, and I want to go ahead and give some, brief thoughts about them now before they go too much out of my head. And I gotta start focusing more on 2024 here. There's just so many books on the horizon that I want to, keep reading. So I hope if you're also following awards recently that you're getting some great recommendations out of them, or maybe some of these have spoken to you as well. I'd love to hear about that. But in the meantime, thanks so much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next time.